Hello again, this is Diane. I have a video to show you of a steampunk junk journal that I made, and I used the Tattered Time paper from DCWV and this stack from Colorbach that I got at Walmart, and it's just a thin one-sided paper, but some of the images worked really great for the steampunk idea. And I also had bought this orange smash book that was on clearance, and so I could just use pages out of it, and so I used a few of the pages out of that. Also used a few other pages out of a handyman book and a book about Victorian London, and those pages worked really well in this book. And so, and also I had hot off the press steampunk line of papers, and they were also thin and one-sided, but I put them together to make double-sided pages, and I also used them for the cover here. The gears were cut with I believe it was a Tim Holtz die cut with my Big Shot, and I cut out a tablet back cardboard and inked them up with various colors of distress inks, and then I ended up putting embossing powder or embossing ink all over them, and using an old embossing powder that I had that ended up looking like this coppery color, so that turned out pretty well. I put on one of the Tim Holtz Adage stickers, or tickets, and then for the closure I used a crocodile to punch a hole and put in a Tim Holtz faucet knob and screwed it on, and on the back also punched a hole with the crocodile. Had a shank button, and the shank just barely fit up through the back of the book, and I was able to slide this jump ring through it and attach one of the Tim Holtz swivel clasps to close it up with. The cover is actually made from an old book cover that I got from the library for $1, and here we go. This is one of the hot off the press pages. I just cut out this image, and it had a wing here, and I cut that off and added one that I had cut from my Cricut. It's kind of a shimmery goldy green paper that I've had for a long time. It was perfect for that. This is one of the smash book pages, and I stapled on a Tim Holtz Adage ticket. And oh, I also used some pages out of a steampunk coloring book, which I got at Michael's. It's nice white pages, not the newsprinty looking standard coloring book pages, so I used a few pages from that. Somebody wanted a steampunk book, and I just didn't really have a lot of steampunk papers, so I had to be inventive. This page is from the Tattered Time, and I apologize if you can hear pounding because there are people siding my house. But anyway, these are scraps of cardstock that I had, and I stitched them on. This is printed from the internet. I also downloaded and printed a lot of images to help embellish the book. This is printed from the internet, and I distressed it and glued it to ledger paper. And I put a square brad there and stitched everything down so it makes a pocket. This is the two backs of pages that were white, so I used homemade glimmer mists on both of them. This is a cutout from my Cricut with gold paper, and then more of the gears that I cut out with metallic looking paper, and some little pieces from the Prima Printery 6x6 pad I've used throughout the book. This is an envelope that I folded in half. I slit that long end so it could be two pockets and bound it right in the middle, and decorated it with some of the papers and some stickers and rub-ons. And the tags are coffee stained and stamped with various stamps, including some Stamping Up and 7 Gypsies stamps. And the bottom of this page also has a Ferris wheel stamp and the words "Oh my." This page is from the smash book, and this is a vellum page with keys on it that I've had for quite a long time. This is one of the hot off the press pages with gears on it, and I used a Melody Ross flash card that says "Believe," and I clipped it on with a Stampin' Up paper clip in the shape of a quote bubble. And this is the Tattered Time paper. It's kind of glossy. And I used this EK Success punch to punch the edge of it, and made a little stamped date thing there. And then this gear element here was printed off the internet. I just love that. And I stitched it down with zigzag stitch to form a pocket, and then inserted this Graphic 45 Steampunk Debutante card. I had purchased a couple of sheets of the Steampunk Debutante, and that's all I had. So that's in the book also. On the back of this, I used scraps of cardstock that I tore and inked, and I put on some washi tape and stamped to make it a journaling card. Another page from the coloring book. This is from the Handyman book, and I decorated it with a file tab card that was cut out from Cricut, and it was stitched on with zigzag stitch and black thread. Some cutouts from, it's either Tattered Time or Timeless Type stack from DCWV, these little pennant shapes, and some Graphic 45 Steampunk Debutante images. And here's the other side of the Handyman page, and I decorated that with more washi tape and more of the Prima printery pieces, and I stitched them or glued them on so that they would form a pocket here. Inserted some of the Steampunk Debutante cards and stamped this card with a light bulb. Great idea. This is from the hot off the press papers. There's two of them here. I glued them back to back to make them double-sided. And this image here is Stampin' Up die with a Stampin' Up stamp that matches it, and I cut that out with my Big Shot, stamped it with Stays On ink. This page, again with the hot off the press, has some clocks and gears, and I used a scrap of the Tattered Time gear page to make a pocket and cut it out again with that KC Success, I think it's called, punch, edge punch. And then I had these tags that I had previously made, and they went well with the book. This is just a tag that has a piece of washi tape and some seam binding, and it says it's the little things that make life big. And this stamp tag I had colored up with Ranger copper and silver paint daubers that I had found on clearance, and then I used Stays On ink to stamp these images. And I stamped this little crown and cut it out and popped it up, and I stamped a ledger stamp on the back. This page is from Basic Gray. I think it's from the Hey Boy collection, and this is an envelope with a cellophane window that I folded up, distressed, and glued on some scraps of the hot off the press paper. This is a Post-it note, it says notes on it, and I just cut a yellow index card to size and glued it to that to fit in that pocket. I folded up the envelope to form that pocket. This is the Steampunk Debutante image. I glued it to a piece of manila file folder, stamped on the back for journaling, and then used my Crystal Effects to glue on this bread tag, and I rubbed Stays On ink all over it, and then I hit it with my heat gun, kind of warped it a little bit and made it look kind of funky. This is the other side of the Basic Gray. It has trains on it, some washi tape, and one of the things I had printed off the internet was a page of little cards that had really cool images to go with the steampunk look, and this is one of those cards, and I'll point out the rest of them as we go. And then I had this stamp with a bird and a clock on the bird, and then a frame that went around it. Two different stamps, two different sets. I don't remember what stamp sets they are. Here is a page from Tattered Time. There's the other side of that page, and I folded it and sewed it into a pocket with a black hinge attached to it so I could attach it to the binding without losing any space in the envelope. and I used this kind of stitch to make it look like cogs on a gear. And then I used a piece of a manila folder to make the tag inside. It has a Tim Holtz stamp and this stamp for journaling, and some collage type stamps here. And I distressed it up with Distress inks. I used this punch from Stampin' Up! To punch the inset there, and then I punched the pull out of the same so it fits right in there. This is actually an image from an old fashion magazine. I think it was at least 8 years old. It was in the box of free stuff at the library, and I took it home just to see if there was anything in there I could use for art journaling or something, and I thought that this fashion spread was perfect with the buckles and her hat, and just the whole look of it looked really good with the steampunk. So I backed her with some cardstock and made her a pocket there. This is cut from the internet, and this part was all blank, and I just stamped this journaling stamp on it and distressed it up, glued it to some cardstock. Here's a rusty looking page, and it has a Steampunk Debutante frame. I put another of the Stampin' Up! Paper clips there, this time in the shape of an arrow. This is one of the pages from the Victorian London book. Very industrial looking, so I thought it went very well. And I didn't do anything to that side of the page. This is a map of old Victorian London, and it has, I adhered this little image from the Steampunk Debutante. This is also from Steampunk Debutante. Made a nice large card, so I just attached it as a page. And I also attached this coin envelope stamped on it. I used this little square rectangular paper clip, and it's Tim Holtz stamps there. And this is just a little card I cut out with Stampin' Up! Stamps, and I used this Stampin' Up! Spritzer. And what you do is take your marker, and when you squeeze the bulb, it spritzes the ink out like that. So it's pretty cool. And then this is another page from the Victorian London book. It has a hinge type of thing that I cut out with copper paper with my Cricut, and I attached these square eyelets and this voice bubble here to make it look like whatever you write in here is being said by that gentleman. This is a little piece from the Prima printery, and I just made a little tiny pocket, and this little Steampunk Debutante card can fit right in there. And on the other side, some tickets printed from the internet, also another little pocket, and this is one of the sheet of cards that I printed. I distressed it. Here's another basic gray sheet, and I put on a little scrap of timeless, what is it called? Tattered Time. And this is a bank envelope, and I distressed it with black ink. This I printed from the internet, and I attached one of these little spinners from Stampin' Up! And I stamped some words in the sections there, just for fun. It's got some Tim Holtz washi tape and some journaling on the back. That's just a pretty plain looking page. I used a scrap of this to make a photo mat. This is from the Colorbach Vintage Treasures book. And this is another scrap from Tattered Time, and I stitched that with a zigzag stitch and made this tag with a dress form and masked it and stamped a butterfly, and that goes right in there. And I'm about out of time here, so I'm going to stop right here and pick it up for the next video. So make sure you look for part 2.